what is coming down the pipes with climate disruption, climate mayhem, doesn't benefit anybody on the planet. Maybe in the short term, but the short term is getting shorter and shorter. The short term could just be 5 years. We're getting total unpredictability. I mean, unpredictability in terms of the timing of it, but we're getting a better picture of what we can expect from the picture of what happened in the past.
Okay, Paul, thank you for joining me today. This is Paul Beckwith. Most people watching this will know you, I hope, but...
I'm a climate system scientist. So I try to look at the different components of the climate system, sort of analogous to pieces on a chessboard. And I try to play the whole game. I try to figure out where all the pieces are going, how all of the different elements of the climate system are changing, how quickly they're changing, where they've been in the past, where they are now, and where they might be in the future. I'm at the University of Ottawa in the Laboratory for Paleoclimatology.
Okay. And Paul, you and I know one another for several years now. I think we first met online, and I invited you to come down to the annual UN COP, they call it, Conference of Parties to the Kyoto Protocol, that was happening in Lima, Peru that year, 2014.
Yes, the COP20, 2014.
COP20. And we did several very good, very strong videos together, one of which is still the most popular that I've got, which went viral on Reddit.
Yes, in 2014, yeah, you convinced me, you brought a polar bear suit, and you convinced me to go around when it was 85, 90 degrees in this polar bear suit, just about, well, I lost a bit of weight, I think, during
I wore it first. Believe me, I wore it first, and then I wore it out on the playa, essentially, with you know, it was.
You still have it?
Yes, I still have it. Probably should do one of these conversations with the polar bear suit, but that's
a penguin suit as well. You know.
Yeah.
Don't discriminate against Antarctica.
No. Okay. So I asked you to join me today for this conversation because I wanted to get it straight from the horse's mouth, as the American saying goes, what's going on with the climate, and not, you know, with ocean rise or the slow moving effects, but what are the emergent facets of climate change that you're seeing?
Well, the biggest thing is the Arctic temperature amplification, or AA, Arctic amplification. From 1950 to now, the Arctic has warmed about double the rate that the global temperature average has increased. And that's the number you always hear, 2.5 times. But more recently, that rate is about 6 times faster. So the Arctic is warming about 6 times faster than the global average temperature. The global average temperature is warming faster than the equator is warming. When the equator gets all that extra heat, a lot of the heat goes into evaporation of water, which doesn't actually change the temperature on the ground. It makes it more humid and more difficult to live, to be outside, to work outside. You know, we're reaching these critical temperatures where our bodies will just shut down outside. So the temperature, why that's key is because the temperature difference between the Arctic and the equator is responsible for setting up the jet streams, which guide our weather patterns.
Yeah. So that is actually the 6-to-1 ratio is what I was predicting in climate presentations I was giving back in 2008 and 2009. So it's.
I've been saying 5 to 8 times for many, many years. That 2 times number from mainstream science, from the media, is very misleading, actually.
Yes, and in fact, as you and I both know, mainstream media and scientists who are really forced by the occupation, the rules of the occupation, to be conservative in their projections, have been giving a misleading impression to people, to humanity, as to what's going on and how fast it's happening. And it's a joke within the climate community to which you and I belong that things are always going faster than are predicted. The IPCC report is arguably laughably 20 years behind the time.
Yeah. I mean, just Google climate change faster than expected. You find loads and loads of pages. Google climate change as expected or slower than expected, and you find nothing. So clearly the scientific view on the rate of climate change is completely biased to being, almost ridiculous, almost a joke. I mean, it's it wasn't so serious a problem, I would say, it's almost laughable.
Yeah.
They're always trying to chase a moving target, and that target is moving faster and faster. And they're just, a lot of it is to do with the idea of exponential change.
I love your image there. They're always chasing a moving target, because most of us know that chasing a moving target, whether it's throwing a rock at something or a snowball, or God forbid something stronger like trying to shoot at something that's moving or running in the movies, it's very difficult to hit difficult to hit.
And if the thing that is moving is not moving at a constant speed, but it's accelerating, then it's
forget about it.
A difficult problem.
Forget about it. Then you're always going to hit where it was or where you think it's going to be, but we perceive in linear terms. We don't perceive in exponential terms.
Yes. So what we really need is the scientific community to say, okay, here's what the observations are showing about climate change, the rate of climate change, the change in the Arctic, the change in extreme weather events, the change in the jet stream. This is what the data is showing right now, and here's what here's what our level of understanding is. Here's what our models say. There's obviously a big gap there. You always trust the observations. The models have to be tweaked and adjusted with more information, more data, better analysis to actually depict reality. And
I also feel that should be augmented, that scientists should get in the habit of presenting off the record, or not off the record, but presenting their personal views and identify it. That my personal view is that we are headed for, so that they are not risking their reputation. They're stating clearly that this is not a calculated projection on the data. This is my gut feel.
Yes, exactly. I think, so anybody interviewing a scientist can get the information on their work, because most scientists love to talk about their own work, but they're reticent to talk about other people's work or the overall system, how all the pieces are fitting together. So that's when you get them and say, okay, you've told me everything as a scientist. Now, as a person, looking out the window at the changes that are occurring on our planet, let's talk about those sort of feelings that you have, or gut feelings or views of, are we, where are we heading? Where are we right now? Where are we heading? Because, and bring up the, climate is always happening faster than expected. So the expectations clearly need to change.
You mean climate change, not climate per se?
Climate change is happening. Yes, the climate is changing faster than expected, much, much faster, and it's accelerating. And we need better tools to determine, to figure out what's going on. And again, it gets back to the idea of the exponential function. I heard a very good analogy. Let's say you're in an office and there's a water cooler on the other side of the room, and you take steps, linear steps to the water cooler. Okay, you arrive there. Now, let's say those steps are exponential. So the distance that you go in the second step is double the distance in the first step, and then double it again for the third step, and so on. To get to the water, instead of getting the water cooler, you go around the Earth more than once. Basically, the exponential function. So it's hard for people to wrap their
very hard. Everything about climate change is exponential. Everything everything about what humanity is doing on the planet, almost everything, is exponential because our numbers are growing exponentially. Our appetites are being magnified exponentially. So anyhow, I'd like to move along. One thing that you said clued me into one of the paths that I wanted to follow today. And as you know, I publish my email address in the clear, and by and large, I don't get negativity coming to me. I have not had any deniers take the time to really to tie into me with any abuse. Thank God. But I did get one email recently from someone who was trying to respectfully convince me that we're on our way to a new ice age. So this is one of the, I'll call it urban legends that's passed around. And I think I sent you the fellow's email, but I wanted you to respond today, if you would, just a few moments to why that is not occurring, and perhaps speculate on why you see so many people thinking or commenting that, oh, that's not true, we're on our way to an ice age, not warming.
Yes, well, there are these Milankovitch cycles, which are long period cycles of how the geometry of the Earth rotating around the sun changes. So the shape of the orbit, it's not circular, it's slightly elliptical. And the tilt of the Earth is very important, and that changes in a cycle between about 21 and 29 degrees, and we're at 26.5. So that's over. And then there's another cycle of the Earth is rotating on an axis, and that axis is precessing like a top.
Yeah.
It's not always pointing at the North Star.
I think it's called precession. Precession,
yes. So these things change the level of sunlight that is incident on the Earth, and where it's hitting the Earth slightly, and this causes the, for example, the 100,000-year cycle of cold, warm Earth for 10,000 years, and then go into an ice age, cooling, maybe 5 degrees cooler quickly, and then a rise up over the 10,000-year cycle. 10,000, 20,000, 40,000, 100,000-year cycles. So this is one thing that happens. Now, one of the big things that people are trying to latch onto is people have a worldview, and if their worldview cannot accept greenhouse gases and climate change from our human behavior, they have to try to jump through hoops to think of ways to reconcile changes that we're seeing in extreme weather and the planet with their worldview not accepting climate change. So the big thing people are latching onto now is something called the GSM, or Grand Solar Minimum. Okay, so the sun goes through cycles. It's about every 11 years the amount of sunspots. They increase and they decrease. Okay, so there's an 11-year, it's actually a 22-year cycle, but we see half of the cycle.
Yeah. 11 years increasing, 11 years decreasing.
Yeah. So sunspot activity, we're going into a quieter period. It may, in the past, the sunspot activity has gone into quiet periods. For example, the Maunder minimum was about a 70-year period when there wasn't much, there weren't too many sunspots. So the sun was putting out slightly less energy, and the Earth cooled a little bit. Now, the amount of change, the amount of forcing from these solar cycles is only about 0.1%. Okay, it's a very small amount compared to greenhouse gases that are several orders of magnitude stronger effect in terms of the forcing. So the idea so it is possible, but we don't know if the sun was to go into this grand solar minimum, similar to the Maunder minimum or the Dalton minimum, and put out slightly less energy. People are saying, well, we'll cool, but that's just not going to happen because we've changed the chemistry of the atmosphere with the greenhouse gases so much that's going to far swamp out any change.
The forcing of that those Milankovitch cycles is far less at this point than They're
It's far
background
less.
noise.
Such that most scientists think that, according to these Milankovic cycles, we should be going into a cooling period, and we're just not seeing it. Greenhouse gases are completely overwhelming that. So we've essentially modified our atmosphere inadvertently, and so that we avoid these ice ages in the future.
Well, like Jim Hansen says, in terms of your use of the word inadvertently, that our parents had the excuse that they didn't know. We can only pretend we don't know.
Yes.
And there's a lot of momentum behind the pretending we don't know via disinformation. And the source of that disinformation, if you famously follow the money,
Yes.
that old meme from the Nixon era,
Yes.
if you follow the money, then the money for disinformation is coming from the fossil fuel industry primarily, but also, I believe, in general, from the banks and business community who want consumer confidence to be high, and anticipating climate change and food shortages and disappearing coastlines and interruptions in tourism is not the kind of thing that will keep consumers buying and going. So anyhow, I as you know, I insert that perspective as often as I can, because people really, I believe, need to get that we are not being told the truth, and in many cases being lied to. Anyhow, thanks for tackling that question of the grand solar minimum and the claims, the evasive claims that we should be going into an ice age, not global warming. We handled that one.
So if you want to get more derogatory email from deniers and people with alternate views of reality, then if you harp on that point for a little bit and try to fit it into your videos, etc., then they'll find you very soon. I can guarantee you.
That's okay. I'm not worried. Okay, moving right along. So, is there anything else that is top of your mind in terms of the effects we're seeing now that are most urgent? And then we'll move to our topic 2.
Well, I've been doing several videos recently on the state-of-the-art mainstream science, their views on connecting this Arctic temperature amplification to midstream extreme weather events. So, we see the frequency, severity, and duration of extreme weather events ramping up extremely fast in mid-latitudes, where most of the people on the planet live in the northern hemisphere, and they live in the mid-latitudes. So we're experiencing, crazy weather whiplashing. There'll be floods one year and drought another year, back to floods. And this, cities are being devastated by torrential rain events, flooding out. So one of the things is this. So there was a report that just came out in March of 2018, which sort of is like a review paper, if you like, of the present state of knowledge. And it still amazes me, it's the understanding is getting better, but it's still a long way from where it really needs to be to address, to understand how the climate system is changing. So one thing is it doesn't tie in what's happening with the Arctic amplification to Greenland, for example. The melt on Greenland, the calving on Greenland, which is
calving. You mean the breaking off of?
Breaking off of ice, which is very important. Which is the melt rates are doubling on Greenland and in the Antarctica roughly every 5 to 10 years. Hansen was saying it's about 7 years. So Greenland is getting darker. It's shedding more ice. And that's having a bigger and bigger impact on sea level rise. Also, it brushes over and doesn't talk about the permafrost in the Arctic, the melting permafrost, the methane hydrates, for example, in Siberia and on the seafloor, and the threat that those have to feed back into the climate system and make things, basically, we haven't seen anything yet. If methane starts coming off in larger amounts than it is, then, we're going to be, we're getting very close to an Arctic without sea ice at the end of the summer. And then when that happens, the rate of Arctic warming is going to accelerate at least an order of magnitude over anything we've seen. And, people are going to become very panicked over this and say, well, why didn't you tell us this was going to happen?
Hey, we've been trying for months. Let me go back to one technical point to try to reduce it to common terms. You've said a couple of times order of magnitude or orders of magnitude. An order of magnitude means 10 times as much. And the way we're familiar with order of magnitude in the common media is that the difference between a category 3, a category 4, and a category 5 hurricane is an order of magnitude, 10 times as much. No, it's not the wind speed. I think it's the total volume of wind or the total energy that they're measuring by that cyclonic activity. So it's not 10 times as fast, but it's 10 times as powerful.
But the energy is about 10 times. The energy, the ability to cause damage is about 10 times.
Yeah, I wanted to mention also, this is kind of way out in left field and deserves a whole conversation on its own. I'll have to get in touch with the scientist who's leading that research. But his claim, and I'm forgetting his name now, British.
McGuire.
I'm sorry?
Bill McGuire.
Bill McGuire, yes, thank you. That Bill McGuire researches the correlation between climate change and the increase in seismic activity, earthquakes, and volcanicity, volcanoes. And his causal connection, if you need why would climate change affect earthquakes, is because we are redistributing the weighting that's on the thin crust of the planet Earth. If you think of the crust of Earth as as a thin layer of broken sediment on the surface of your coffee cup when the cream cools down. So if you think of the Greenland ice sheet, the Himalayan ice sheet, the Antarctic ice sheet, and then not the polar ice sheet, because that sits on water. But those three, Greenland, Antarctica, and Himalayas, and the water there is melting and redistributing in a thin layer. I compare it to spandex. In all of the oceans of Earth, you can see that the stresses on the crust of Earth are being moved around. Yes. And whereas at one point back in 2008-9, when I brought that correlation or that body of Bill McGuire's work to the attention of people at the UN that I was dealing with, they rolled their eyes, but it's getting much more credibility now.
Yeah, yes, it is. It's basic physics. The density of water is 1 gram per milliliter, right? Ice is lighter, it's 0.9. So ice floats, of course, on water. The land is mostly granite, and it's 2.7 is the density, and the ocean floor is 3, and that makes sense. The ocean floor is heavier, that's why it's the ocean floor, and the land is riding on top of, the continents are riding up atop.
Yeah.
So the point is when you have ice on the land, the density of the ice is about 1/3 that of the land. So if you have 3 kilometers of ice that forms over a long period of time and sits on top of Antarctica, for example, then over time it pushes the land down 1 kilometer. So 3 kilometers of ice will push the land down 1 kilometer. 1 kilometer of thickness of ice would push the land down 1/3 of a kilometer. So as that ice is melting, the water is running off, the weight is less, the land is rising up. So over North America, any part that was covered by the ice ages, the big ice sheets, the Laurentian ice sheet, that pushed down the land, and the land is still rebounding upward. It takes a long time. Now, also, it's more complicated because the areas that the ice is on are pushed down, but that land gets kind of pushed to the side. So you can get the weight of the ice on the land can cause a bulge at the edges. So the edges can actually rise up when the ice is on the land. And now that the ice is melting and the center part is rising up, the edges can actually decrease. And this is happening on some coastlines. So apparent sea level rise is much, much greater because the land is actually subsiding as well. New Orleans is a problem because all of the sediment from the rivers is bringing more and more weight and depositing it on the land off the coastline, and that's pushing it down. So deltas like that are also subsiding. So when you talk about the net effect that people will see is the sea level will be much, much larger there than other areas, for example.
Wow, that's a new one. I thought I knew most of the big areas of the physics of climate change and geoscience that's involved, but you just taught me one that.
Yeah, so the U.S. East Coast is the sea level will rise faster off the U.S. East Coast than many other places of the world, certainly much larger than the global average sea level rise because of the subsidence of the land. The sea level is rising. Also, the Gulf Stream currents are slowing down and they're overriding the continental shelf more and they're pushing water up against the east coast of the U.S. So that all of these factors are causing an enhanced sea level rise rate off the U.S. East Coast.
As we used to say in New York when I lived there, oy vey.
Yes, that's right.
Just a tiny bit of humor. It's good for us to keep our sense of humor.
Yeah. So combine all of these effects with, Hurricane Sandy like superstorms, which are very, very large storms. So the winds are so strong in a circular fashion, and they're pushing up water against the shoreline. And, it's the storm surge that really gets you with these storms. And
I'm still waiting for Hollywood to come out with a scientifically accurate, what's the genre? The genre of movie that apocalyptic dystopias, I mean, my gosh, we're going to have such a climate dystopia soon. And yet the best that Hollywood's been able to do is bad science, things like The Day After Tomorrow.
Yes.
So anyhow, I want to move on to your view of why governments aren't doing enough and why they're not even informing their citizenry as to the threat. Do they know? I got to believe that they know,
Yeah. We talk about governments as if it's like one person, really, right? I mean, governments are just huge bureaucracies of people, and there's departments in the government that should have climate scientists. At least they used to in the U.S. Until recently, and they know.
Well, let's call a spade until the Darth Vader of climate change, Donald Trump, took over. We had a reasonable number of climate scientists advising policy in many places, and now because this one corrupt, selfish, I wouldn't even call him a businessman because New Yorkers know what a bankrupt businessman he is, bankrupt morally, bankrupt more than once probably financially. Because of this one man, he who pays the piper calls the tune, and the American government has purged itself of most of the sanity about climate science. That can be quickly erased, but we will have to hope that there's as we used to say in New York, that we throw the bums out at the next election. So we'll see. Excuse me for getting political. I
think that governments, it seems like the Russians, the Putin government, they're all chomping at the bit for the sea ice to go so that they can drill and extract resources in the Arctic. And I don't think that they comprehend how serious the climate disruption is, the weather disruption is. When
I think they do. I think they do know. I think
they think Russia will benefit. The growing season will increase.
During their lifetimes, Russia will benefit, and Russia will be in a place of increased power and increased resources compared to the rest of the world. And they are only concerned about their lifetimes and the money that they can line their pockets with. Money is the corrupting influence. That's my take on it.
That's always the case. Yes.
It's interesting how we call them oligarchs in the U.S. media, as if to say, oh, they're not good. But we call the people who are controlling our governments businessmen.
Yes.
The Koch brothers, excuse me.
Yes. No, it's always us versus them. You know, them is bad, and us, we're doing the right thing. You know, it's the same sort of.
Yeah, our tendency to demonize and blame the other person for our.
What is coming down the pipes with climate disruption, climate mayhem, doesn't benefit anybody on the planet.
No.
This is the thing. If they think it's going to benefit Russia, then maybe in the short term, but the short term is getting shorter and shorter. The short term could just be 5 years. You know, get a lot of methane hydrates releasing from the Arctic, get big chunks of ice breaking off Greenland, causing tsunamis, crossing the ocean, also accelerated sea level rise. You know, an event like the history, the paleoclimate shows that we can have these oscillations of temperature where the Gulf Stream shuts off and then restarts and shuts off and restarts. And you get these ice rafting across the Arctic, these Heinrich events where so much ice is shed from Greenland that it would cross the ocean and cause a temporary cooling and disrupt the ocean currents, and then, you know, can restart. Like we're getting total unpredictability. I mean, unpredictability in terms of the timing of it, but we're getting a better picture of what we can expect from the picture of what happened in the past. It's like the paleoclimatology.
Yeah.
What happened in the past? Are we going to get a repeat of that? Are the conditions the same? Because, you know, what right now, I mean, the Arctic is warming so much. There's all of these feedback effects. And one of the biggest feedback effects, the initiation is because the Arctic is getting darker. And it's absorbing more solar energy, and it's getting darker because we're getting rid of the ice is bright white, reflects a lot of sunlight. The snow on the land is white, reflects a lot of sunlight. We're losing the snow,
and we're coloring the snow gray to black with what's called black carbon, a major
black carbon. So the jet streams are thus disrupted, and the jet streams become much wavier. And those ridges of the jet stream are going right up into the Arctic in the middle of the winter, causing the temperatures to be above zero. And the troughs are going right down and getting stuck over North America, for example, causing all of the climate deniers to say we're going into a grand solar minimum. Mm-hmm. You know, if you show them a map of the temperature on the planet, how that has changed, you know, the only blue spot where it's colder is over the US and parts of Northern Europe. Everything else is warming like crazy. So,
yeah, I think one of the problems we've got, and God knows we have a problem here, Houston, is that people in the last few decades have not been raised and educated as systems thinkers.
Yes.
So they don't look at the big picture. They don't consider interactions. It's kind of we live in the age of the 30-second soundbite where you have to reduce it to something that people can get. Whether it's true or not is a separate question, but they have to be able to wrap their heads around it quickly with a few words.
Yes, and this is a systematic problem of society. You know, our universities, for example. To excel in universities, people need to become more and more specialized in a narrower and narrower field, so that they become hyper specialized, and then they can advance that narrow field, but they don't there's a penalty for that, and that's losing sight of the big picture.
Yeah.
That's losing sight of how the pieces connect. I mean, people are trained to be one chess piece, right? They're not trained to play the whole game and see how all the pieces interact. You know, how you join the dots, and how changes in one side of the chessboard or planet will affect changes on other sides, and so on.
Yeah, we call that being a one-trick pony, but that's a bit of an exaggeration.
Yeah, that's the idea. And it's not just universities that are like that, corporations are like that. You know, we were we used to be all generalists, right, when we were hunters and gatherers, right? You know, everybody had to be concerned about the lion in the bush. You didn't have a job role where you didn't have to be concerned about that. You know, now you have the guard, you know, we became so specialized, you know, everybody's got a different role, and there's the role, you know, there's the warrior class, right? Which
so to come back to the central thread here, so, because we're attempting to explore the huge territory of why society and governments are not getting it. And there's a certain amount of feedback there, but I want to insert
psychology in this, right?
Psychology, yeah. I want to insert my perspective here, which I do as often as I possibly can. That's the difference between what we do, which is a conversation, and what a lot of other people do, which is an interview. An interviewer does not insert their own opinion, and I feel very free to insert my opinion. And so, in order to keep our current growth economic system growing, we have to hide from people the seriousness of the not just the climate impacts, but the various ecological impacts that humanity is having, because God forbid people should understand that buying more of this or that, or spraying more of chemicals on your crops or on your lawn is having a negative effect. God forbid people should know that. Our economic system is holding humanity hostage. I want to interject this here before I forget. I want to thank you for introducing me to a group and a movement called the Scientists' Warning to Humanity. I have not carbon copied you on all my back and forth with them, but I'm actually working with them now to try to project the broader family of dimensions, scales, effects, influences that humanity's having on Earth, almost all of which are going south, are heading to in a bad direction. The only one of which they characterize as having improved in recent years is the ozone depletion. We've actually kind of got on top of that. Of course, the Trump administration is backing out of, I believe, the recent additions to the Montreal Protocol, which have put another category of ozone depleting chemicals, the hydrofluorocarbons, have been added to Montreal protocols because they are extremely powerful in depleting ozone. And the Trump administration is saying it's bad for business. My God, bad for business. Don't you think killing off a few 100 million people in the United States was going to be bad for business? Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. Okay. So
no, it's just I mean, the big thing that's hit the news recently is the die-off of insects.
Yes.
People have been concerned about honeybees, right? And
yeah.
Animals that are causing collapse of honeybee hives and things, right? Huge die-off rates, 80% in some places, and it turns out that this is happening in most species of insects around the planet.
Wow. Yeah, let me go into that. Thank you. To put numbers to it, I think the research in Germany was that 70% of their biomass of insects has been lost in the last 40 years, was it?
3 or 4 decades, yeah.
I think since the 1970s was the baseline.
They've had studies with volunteers going out to all these different sites and measuring the, with little nets set up, and, they're systematically doing measurements widespread. And it's not just in Germany. We've seen a huge decline of songbirds in the UK, for example.
Yeah.
What do they eat, the insects?
Yeah, when insects go, everything that depends upon them. Humans depend upon insects, believe it or not.
Yes, exactly. So,
even those creepy crawlers, they recycle. So
next time you have a mosquito land on you, just let it do its thing.
No.
Don't go and squash it.
No, that brings me to another one. There was a recent flurry of interest radio programs I found in the last couple of weeks about the extreme upsurgence of 3 disease vectors in the United States: flea-borne diseases, tick-borne diseases, and mosquito-borne diseases. And they're affecting the United States differently geographically. I think, there's West Nile was more prevalent in the Western United States. That's West Nile is a mosquito-borne disease. Lyme disease is running rampant in the eastern to midsection of the United States, and that's borne by deer ticks, and deers are all over the place, and the tick populations and flea and mosquito populations are not being killed back by extremer temperatures in winter. The temperatures are milder. And then last of all is the tick-borne diseases, and I'm trying to remember the particular disease.
Well, there was a disease in South America that they were telling women not to.
Oh, right, the Zika virus.
Zika, yes, Zika.
Is that a tick-borne disease?
I think
not tick, flea-borne.
Mosquitoes, I'm not sure.
Mosquito, yeah, mosquito. Anyhow,
so
those 3 vectors, as has been predicted way back, long time ago in 2007, when An Inconvenient Truth, we don't give enough credit to that movie, when An Inconvenient Truth talked about the increasing incidence that we can expect of vectors bearing diseases. It's happening, guys.
Yeah, and don't forget the vectors that are taking out trees as well.
Yeah, right.
And the emerald ash borer, these insects would have been killed off in cold winters.
Yeah.
Cold winters haven't been severe enough to kill them off. I mean, so just say, when the winter is really cold, just be thankful. The trees are going to have a better chance.
Yeah. Let's move to the third section briefly.
Sure.
The third thing I wanted to cover today, and we'll probably return to these future conversations, is what people should be doing. Okay, now we'll skip over what nations should be doing, because they should be taking it more seriously and alerting their populations what's going on. That's a good general synthesis, but what people should be doing is more subtle, because there's the level of what can I do to stop or slow climate change, which is called mitigation. And then there's the what should I be doing to protect myself and my family for the future, which is called adaptation, roughly speaking. Survival, if you want to get down to it, if things get really off the charts very quickly, as some people are quite afraid. So give me a thumbnail of what you think people should be doing.
Well, I think what humanity, like you're talking about what individuals should do.
Individuals, what individuals and groups.
Before I say that, I think what society needs to do is think about, I call it climate restoration, or what can we do to restore a stable climate? What can we do to restore a healthy climate so that there's intergenerational equity? Like our grandkids, our kids and our grandkids, don't they have a human right to enjoy the same environment that we enjoyed as children and that our parents enjoyed. So I'm just talking about the idea or the goal. We won't talk about the methods to get there, but we need goals that are much better than what the IPCC has put out there. The IPCC, the best scenario, they have these representative concentration pathways, and the best case is RCP 2.6, and that involves warming beyond what we have and disruption, and we know with the warming we have, it's causing huge problems. So what they need to have an RCP 0.0 scenario, right? And if you don't have lofty goals, then you don't know what you're aiming for, really.
Okay.
So
I'm going to push that one aside because
anyway, that's what I think society should do. But what individuals should do?
No, let me say a comment before I leave it. But I'm pushing that one aside because, as we used to say in New York, that ain't gonna happen, and it ain't gonna happen because nations have to get it. So
yeah,
people have to get it despite nations and despite the garbage that's peddled by some of the mainstream media and the dumbed down news that's peddled by most of the mainstream media. So how are people how should they be responding now? How should they be responding in those two areas of what can they do to try to change things, if that's at all worthwhile anymore, and what can they do to protect themselves?
Okay, well, I think the first step is, and I've been saying it for a while, we're in a climate change emergency. So people, I think, need to sit back and look at the evidence, or, for yourself and say, everything is changing so fast. We're in a lot of trouble. Things are very, very going downhill all over the planet. So that's the first step. And
knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. People should arm themselves with knowledge.
People need to pass the knowledge that we're in a very, very grave and dire situation.
Share that knowledge. Yes.
Yeah. Like forget about the PR. Oh, you can't tell people how bad it is because they're gonna be paralyzed. They're not gonna be able to do anything. I mean, we lived through the Cold War under the threat of nuclear annihilation, and we carried on with our lives, and luckily we didn't experience the huge fireworks shows that were possible that would have ended life on Earth with nuclear arsenals. But you can't, if you don't recognize how serious a problem is, how can you possibly do the right things, do what's required to step back off the precipice of that problem?
And to people who I've come across who tell me, I keep trying, but my family, my friends, they say, oh, that's, don't be so down, don't be so, I read about that. Yeah. It's a small personal price to pay to be that some people call me Dr. Dire, to be that dire person, that Cassandra, shall we say, because as things get bad, people will look to you as, oh, you were right. What's next? What can we expect next? So you're going to have to people who find themselves in that role, the greatest service they can give to future and current and future humanity is to take the heat of being mixed metaphor there, to take the heat of being that a little bit that doomsayer or that dire sayer.
See, you don't have to be that doomsday. You can say how bad it is right now, and it's going to get a lot worse in the direction we're heading, but there are a lot of people, there's more and more people that are becoming aware of how dire the situation is. There's more and more people that are trying to look for solutions, like things that we can do to head us off that precipice. And a lot of those things fit under what I was trying to say about, climate restoration. The idea that, let's have some positive goals. Let's recognize, let's not sugarcoat anything, hide anything. Let's talk about the issues of where we're heading and what can we possibly do to step back from the precipice. The problem is you have a lot of people that deny the problem completely, deny climate change completely, and then suddenly these people, I can guarantee you, there'll probably be a day when they say, "Holy smokes, we're finished. That's it. There's no chance. We can't do anything." Right? They'll tip over. It's just all or nothing thinking. Nothing's the problem. Everything's the problem. We can't do anything. It's like there's no gray area in between.
Again, that's that tendency in society to want simple explanations. And if it's not, oh, things are going to get better or things are not so bad, then it's, oh, all is lost. Well, let's go back and party. Yes,
exactly. And there's also people that are, their faith is completely in technology, right? They think that we'll get technologies that will address the problem. And I would argue, okay, we might, but so let's put the military budget of the US for 1 year to address to getting these technologies to suck CO2 out of the atmosphere.
Yep.
Restoring a healthy climate. Let's just do that, and then I can agree that technology, may give us a chance here. But we're not doing anything at the moment.
Well, that's what governments are doing, and now what let's focus again what individuals can be doing, because a lot of people feel disempowered in this situation. I mean, our videos, climatematters.tv, Climate Matters videos are getting increasing viewership. We're really pleased, and I will put in a plug. Please share them if you're watching this. If you watched this much of this video, you're concerned, please share this. And please, if you speak another language besides English, we need translations of subtitles into other languages. So thank you ahead of time. But we have to get out there with the knowledge that people can wrap their heads around.
Yeah, I mean, there's things, there's practical things that people can do. If you're in the market to move or to, buy your first house, or downsize, just look at the location of where, if you're thinking of buying a place, how resilient would this place be to high winds, for example? How, is it in a city, or is it in an area that's sort of like a lowland next to a river or something? Is it going to be subjected to flooding? Is it, and also, diet, changing our diet, like we can actually eat healthier for ourselves, right? Less meat, more natural foods. And that is great for improving our own personal health. It's also great for improving the health of our climate. I mean, there's so many things that an individual can do, at your workplace, the people you associate with, if your workplace, how will your workplace fare, for example, if the power's out for a few days or something? And if you don't think it will fare very well, you could set up a committee and talk about, okay, let's set up something within where you work on how to make the company more resilient to unexpected things. And these unexpected things like power outages or floods or high winds, how can we keep saying they're unexpected? I mean, that's the thing, right? They're not unexpected. They're I mean, just in Ottawa in the last few weeks, I mean, we had very, very warm days. It was almost like a summer day. That was after it was almost freezing the day before. We had extremely high winds. We had some hail, a hailstorm. Like we had all of these different things. And last year, the rivers had record flooding, and people all along the river were flooded out, and they're getting insurance money. And the insurance companies people are actually wanting to elevate their houses. If you live on a river and you're rebuilding your house because it was flooded, just jack up the whole house 8 feet or something from where it is, right? If you want to renovate your house, jack it up 8 feet and then have like storage and stuff underneath. You're not going to worry about flooding. So just the thinking has to change. These 1 in 100 year events or 1 in 500 year events that happen every 5 or 10 years now, they're not expected. Expect them to happen.
Yeah.
Stop,
Yeah.
like accept the reality of the changes and what can we do about it.
Very good message. I like your message about as I state it, as I frame it, eating lower on the food chain. Humanity can reduce its ecological footprint greatly by, going back to when meat was a part of a meal and not the main part of the meal, not big steak with a little scoop of rice on the side or from French fries, and that is, to use a pun, that is a sacred cow. You don't want to tell people ordinarily about to eat differently than they do, but I don't go around telling people go vegan, because there are some people who will accept that message and they're already moving in that direction. So I want to go for the people who they want to have their steak and say, yeah, have your steak, just have a smaller steak.
and have it have it once a month instead of every couple of weeks, and you'll enjoy it more.
And if you're going to be a meat eater, go for the grass-fed, because they say that ruminants, which cows are ruminants that are raised as they were evolved to be raised, as they co-evolved with the earth and are actually grazers on plains, they protect the plains, they prevent desertification. Anyhow,
okay.
You got any parting thoughts, or shall we wrap it up and send it? People know their own skill sets, right? So just try to enlarge and use your strengths, right? Don't just try to reinvent the wheel, and you can run off and become an environmentalist and completely change your life. But you can think, you can do that, and I wouldn't recommend doing that necessarily. Just figure out how you can bring some of these ideas and thoughts into your own life to influence and let people know around you of what's happening with our climate crisis, and talk about becoming more resilient from those big storms that are coming more and more often. And you don't even have to talk about climate change. You can just talk about why all these storms getting a lot worse. Gee, what's going to happen with what's happening with the grain prices? What are we going to eat if there's massive, flooding in all of the fields of the main grain belts or something? Get your hands dirty and learn to grow vegetables in your backyard.
Yes.
On your balcony.
Yeah.
Before we go, Paul, I want to give the hats off to you and your work over the years. And your videos are contained at paulbeckwith.net.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, we'll put that in our lower third so people can get that, and I think people would do well to see what you've got, and hopefully they'll see more of you here on my channel.
Okay, great.
It's
been great talking.
Yeah, it was a very good one today. Very, very animated. Thank you very much, Paul.